someone requests yours or your beloved's undergarments, clothes, or pieces of clothes, or drops of blood or sperm or saliva, or your hair or your nails, you should be very careful, and it should raise your suspicion whether these people are truly spiritually evolved or there for their personal gain and are involved with the demonic realm, black magic and occult activities, because if such requests are there, these people are not the workers of the light, but are the servants of the darkness, of the matter, where their intention is to manipulate the reality or you or your reality for their own personal gain, to attract you, to bind you in one way or the other, even if fulfilling your temporary wishes. They will still bind you to certain occult forces which will eventually drain your spiritual essence, light essence, energy, and will enslave you. So in this case, your own desire or desires become the pathway to your spiritual demise and to the spiritual slavery or energetic slavery of the matrix of the occult darker forces of the collective being. The other type of the occult manipulation is when someone offers you something to eat or to drink or to ingest somehow, so that it gets into your digestive system and spreads all over the body. Usually in such a case, the food contains something that is consecrated to the subtle forces, where once it is in your body, in your energy field, it becomes like your IP address through which these spirits can identify you and attack you. So when you're not sure whether certain people, groups of people, wish you well, be careful when you dine with them, when you take something that they offer you to eat or to drink. Better abstain and protect your field at all times by being aware. Do not lend your stuff to other people. If you know that these people are connected to the occult or play with the occult forces, do not allow them into your house, into your space of being or dwelling very easily, not on the level of emotions, nor on the level of thoughts, nor into the physical space. Do not accept any gifts from them, and do not allow them to leave anything in your house. And if they've done so, or you've discovered something in your house or around your house that is of suspicious nature, some paper packets or something wrapped, some red substance or rice or rice beans and red substance, or any type of suspicious substance looking like spices or grains, and especially if you see red substance in India known as sindoor, which could be dry blood, you should immediately get rid of it, burn it, put a Celtic cross on it, and once you've burnt it, bury it and pour salt on that burial place. Disconnect mentally and spiritually from it. If you've discovered something in the house, also burn it. Burn it always. Whatever suspicious you may find in your house, in your dwelling, around your house, burn it. If someone has ingested such magically consecrated stuff through food or beverages, it is much more difficult to get rid of it. But there are people in this world who are capable, through becoming aware of that, by purifying, detoxifying their body in a specific way through certain herbs or alchemical preparations, and by severing cords within one's consciousness with any dark and occult forces, one can free oneself from such bondages with occult, unconscious bondages, unexpected, but somewhat karmically correct, because whatever we experience in this life, it is correct, it is right, it is a part of our destiny, and can always lead us to liberation if we can recognize this opportunity and take our destiny in our own hands with awareness. We can break through any shackles, because after all, everything is within our consciousness, whether of the light or of the darkness, and only we ourselves can willfully take our destiny in our hands and break through such shackles, dissolve them, dissolve the karmic debts, karmic bondages and ties with any occult forces and darker forces, and understand the lesson, learn the lesson. The darkness dissolves once we learn the lesson. Some human beings who are connected with darker forces usually may have this sort of attractive, charismatic field, very powerful, very willful, through which they try to manipulate and control others through soft but suspicious persuasion. Be careful with such individuals as well, because even though they might not be directly connected to the occult forces use their vessel consciously, unconsciously, knowingly or unknowingly. They are being used by the forces of the darkness, and the way these forces connect to their soul and use their vehicle, vessel, for their manipulation is through their trauma, through their ego, through their narcissistic limited self, because narcissism means a black hole, the self that is codependent on the projected reality for self-validation due to trauma. And because of that blackness, this self is in constant need for some form of energy on whatever level, mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, from the outside. That's why they need to manipulate the outside reality for their own personal gain, and first of all, energy. Because they are like energy vampires. Narcissism is in other words, in the occult way in an occult way it would be called spiritual vampirism, energetic vampirism, where this individual builds up their success, charisma on the energy of other people. But in order to gain access to that energy, they need to manipulate these people into submission, into opening to them emotionally. So when these people are open emotionally, they become victims of this person's manipulation. And this person might not be fully aware of that, because this person is just a vessel of the darker forces, just a vehicle through which the darkness operates and through which the darkness puts lighter souls into submission. You may experience this in relationships with your parents, while looking for spiritual knowledge, especially in the circles of spiritual teaching, because in this day and age our spirituality is predominantly demonic. Demonic means the external side of spirituality is worshipped, and this external wrappers of the spirituality or side requires conscious energy of other people. And so these people are manipulated into submission, into a belief. They are possessed by these beliefs and ideologies, and thus partake in the cultivation of the demonic side of the collective through spirituality or in the name of spirituality. So this is another form of spiritual possession, where a certain person or their field, their charisma, their emotions, their thoughts, trying to possess you and push you into submission of your will, so that your thoughts, your emotions can be in their possession too, can be controlled and manipulated to their advantage. And when your will is manipulated and controlled, when your physical being, emotional and mental, are in the possession of someone else, you may also say that you are under someone's spiritual attack or occult influence, because their shadows are more powerful than your own being in this case, because you just but naturally submit your will or are manipulated into this submission in whichever name, because you admire this person, because they seem to be charismatic, because they're more successful or wealthier. And so when we experience narcissistic type of relationships, or we fall for these type of relationships, there is a karmic lesson. And this lesson is lack of self-love and self-respect that is usually the result of a healthy individuality or healthy sense of self. The majority of people have unhealthy, unwholesome sense of self, addicted, dispersed, and traumatized. And thus, narcissistic type of relationship is the most predominant type of relationship in this day and age, in this world at this point of time. And these relationships are on all levels. On the level of spirituality, where we have the spiritual pyramidical hierarchy in spirituality, where the external side is emphasized, where our conscious focus is constantly drained, our conscious energy is constantly drained by being focused on something outside of ourselves, by constantly believing that someone knows better than us, by submitting our will, by empowering everything else outside of ourselves, or thinking that it's more important, better than us. These thoughts already create the pathways to the occult possession. Occult means hidden, unconscious. You're not conscious about this process. But by choosing to believe in something or someone, by choosing to submit your will for any ideology, belief system, religions, you partake in this collective demonic power which needs your energy, your conscious essence, to be a part of its occult force. Even though you are not aware of this mechanism, but you partake in it. It is your sole choice. Very often people become victims of the occult because of being unaware, because we have no access to this knowledge, and because we have obsessions, desires, and traumatized sense of self and the reality. And thus we become victims of certain manipulation outside of ourselves. Even our friends or relatives or parents or partners can be stronger in their will, can be more manipulative, and so their field of consciousness will try naturally possess ours, because if ours is weaker than theirs, their will be overpowering our will. And due to this imbalance, there are conflicts. Then the person whose will is in bondage becomes also somehow they feel they're in bondage, but they also feel like they don't know the way out. They become depressed, they open themselves more to the negative forces and their manipulation. They may start going into addictions. They may start being confused and making wrong choices, sabotaging their life, and so on and so forth. So it's not just the deliberate possession of spirits, but it's also the possession of the collective consciousness and the collective shadows that exist within the consciousness that affect our well-being, our emotional, mental, physical well-being, as well as our ability to evolve spiritually or stagnate spiritually. So the choice is, after all, within us, and the free will is a natural barrier, but it can easily be manipulated by people whose will is stronger. So it's important to remember that. After all, no matter what karmic experiences we have, and whether occult attacks or spiritual attacks, psychic attacks, magical attacks, or black magic is a part of our spiritual journey or karmic journey, the main point is not to, fall into panicking or fear, but to become aware, because this awareness, this knowledge, allows one to understand the power of one's free will, the power of one's awareness, which dissipates and dissolves all the limitations. All these attacks are possible only then and there, where we have our weaknesses or some kind of hooks within our system, within our energy body, within our space of consciousness, onto which these occult forces may hook. So it's all by frequency. If we carry the same frequency of jealousy and anger, so we may as well become victims of that type of energy. So when you are on a spiritual path, it's very important to be responsible and to admit your own shortcomings, to resolve and dissolve them, to submit them or just to surrender them to the higher being. Higher being means you become aware of them, you admit them, and take responsibility when they arise as waves in your consciousness or the space of your consciousness. So in order to protect oneself, even when one is under a certain affliction or attack, is trying to consciously affirm that you do not allow any forces of such kind to enter the space of your consciousness or your body or come around you. And this affirmation has to be constant as long as you feel that you're under some type of an attack or someone is trying to invade your space and manipulate. If people try to manipulate you emotionally, you stand your ground, you set emotional and energy boundaries, and you say, I'm sorry, I have to say no, or please do not disturb me, or I cannot partake in it, or this is not for me, I'm sorry, and leave. And internally reaffirm to these forces, go and never come back. Do not give any permission to any force, to any negative thought, to anyone's shadow to affect your space of consciousness or your physical body, or to enter your physical body or space of consciousness and manipulate it. If you reaffirm this every day, if you practice self-observation and cultivate self through absorption and awareness, if you surrender all the negative features, all the characteristics, all the weaknesses to that space of consciousness, of awareness, and keep your focus within, in the body, you become the primary occupant of your body, not other spirits, not other people's shadows and ideologies or demonic forces, but you. And you start growing as a spiritual entity through the cultivation of spiritual essence. And this way, by cultivating your spiritual essence and awareness, you start being protected by the light of your own being. Your light becomes your natural barrier, your ability to stand your ground and say no in the situations where someone is trying to manipulate your will into submission. You create proper energetic boundaries, and by mastering the field of your own consciousness, by dissolving certain attachments and ties to the realm of negative forces, even if they come from your ancestry, bloodlines, you choose to sever all the cords with the forces of darkness. You choose to burn all the pacts with demonic forces and the forces of manipulation within yourself, within your collective being, meaning your ancestry bloodline, and within the collective in general. And this way you gradually, being focused within, being focused on the higher being, with the awareness you dissolve all the ties with the negative forces. You dissolve all the trauma, you dissolve all the limitations and corruption, and reveal your higher essence and transcend through this revelation further. You evolve further, enlightening your physical body as well, purifying and healing your entire being on all levels. You free yourself, liberate on a spiritual level from all the karmic residue, the result of which is this three-dimensional reality and the physical body. And thus, in this way, you proceed further, evolving further as a subtle effulgent being, or enlightened being in other words.